Hello, I'm going to talk to you today about the key for the plot line for the birds. Um, Hopefully you enjoyed this lesson as much as I enjoyed talking about it and sharing it and listening and watching. The setting, of course, of this, it would be an electric line along a country road. It is a bright sunny day, and most likely it's springtime or summertime because the birds are out. There is a beautiful clear blue sky with white fluffy clouds. The time period has to be somewhat modern because there's electricity. The music creates a happy mood, and the bickering birds create a humorous mood. The conflict starts when one bird finds a comfortable place on the electric line but becomes irritated when another bird gets too close and imposes on his space. The conflict continues as more birds land on the electric line, causing more bumping and crowding. Before long, all of the birds are bickering with one another. And then we have dialogue. Some things that the birds could be saying would be, scoot over and make room for me. Hey, get off me. You're in my space. Stop being so grumpy. What a jerk. Ow, you stepped on my toe. Watch it, buddy. Doop-dee-doo. What a beautiful day. So the birds just like people, just having their own personalities. Now, there's a conflict that continues, and it takes a new turn as the plot continues and as we continue to have the rising action. When the new character comes to the electric line, all of the birds stop fighting with each other and they begin to make fun of the new bird. So the inference is, why did all the birds react so terribly to the new bird? Well, mostly it's because the new bird looks different than the other birds. He has bigger feathers, which causes the other birds to laugh and mock him by puffing up their own feathers. Now, the rising action continues and more conflict happens as the new bird plops down on the electric line. This causes all the other birds to slide to the middle. If they are angry about being crowded before, well, they are really angry now. The clumsy bird flips upside down, taking all the birds down. This causes the grumpy bird to begin pecking his feet to make him fall. They are unaware that making him fall will cause trouble for themselves. Now, we have climax. Now, the climax is when the big bird finally falls off. Now, everything building up to that is what we call rising action. But the climax actually happens when the bird finally falls off the line and catapults all of the birds into the air. The bird loses all of their feathers and are essentially naked. What makes up the climax is, up until that point, it's the little birds that are against the big bird. And as soon as the storyline changes that drastically, when that conflict basically is solved, that is where climax happens in the story. This is a turning point because it changes the birds' attitudes. They stop bullying the new bird and instead begin trying to hide. And there's some irony here. Ironically, the birds were making fun of the new bird's feathers. Then they lost their own feathers. Maybe this taught them a lesson about bullying. We have falling action. Things like the new bird sees the feathers falling to the ground, which is literally falling action. The birds begin dropping to the ground, more falling action, literally and figuratively, and the birds realize their feathers are gone and they become embarrassed. We reach resolution, which is like when the conflict is solved. It's sort of the so now what part of the story. All of the birds run and hide, and the new bird has the last laugh because they lost their feathers. And so they all hide behind this. Now this big bird is offering them protection, which brings us with that final irony of, so the little birds lost their own feathers, which is ironic since they laughed at the new bird's feathers. They caused themselves to be made fun of for the same thing they were making fun of. So they were making fun of him because his feathers were different, and now they have no feathers. And that's the irony. Now, the other question is, what trouble did the birds create for themselves? Well, obviously, they caused themselves to get catapulted. And if they had stayed near the edge, the line wouldn't have dropped as much, and they wouldn't have flung them off when the bird fell. because they're all trying to get away from the bird. Then we have this plot line, which is kind of the point of this as we move into our elements of fiction. Understanding a fiction plot line is important. We start off with our exposition. We've talked about all that. A bunch of small birds and the new big bird. The setting, of course, we talked about that. We have our conflict, which is man versus society. The big bird is being made fun of and not included in the group. We have our rising action when the birds bicker and fight over space. More rising action as the birds plop themselves down. More rising action as the big bird flips upside down. Then we have our climax, which is the big bird falls and releases the line. Falling action, which is the big bird sees all of the feathers flying. More falling action, the small birds begin dropping. And then our resolution is the small birds run and hide behind the big bird. And so the big bird has the last laugh. A theme for this story is lots of lessons learned in this, but several themes that emerge from the resolution of the conflict would be your actions can come back to haunt you. Keep your words sweet because one day you may have to eat them. Bullying often leads to your own troubles. Don't make fun of others because you could suffer the same problem. Disrespecting others brings disrespect to oneself. Be accepting of differences in others. Making a fool of others only makes a fool of yourself. There are so many great themes to this. Any of these will work. Just make sure you write something that is a true lesson learned from this short film. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this short film as much as I enjoyed teaching it. Have a wonderful time, and I can't wait to see your answers.